What's up, everybody? Billtendo here, and we are back with Dr. Scott of the Game Closet, former member of the Game Junction, and we are basically just here to talk about his experiences with Game Junction and what his story is. And before we even get started, I just want to make it clear, just like I've done in the past, I'm really trying to get this point across because I'm not a horrible person. My intention is not to burn down what Brandon has in the Game Junction. I am not trying to destroy anything. My issue and my purpose here is I'm a very community minded person. If anyone in the community is going to be involved with Brandon or Game Junction, they need to know what they're getting involved with. So that's my goal here. With that being said, let's start off easy. How long were you with Game Junction and when did you start?
Oh gosh, it's actually been such a while that I'm trying to remember how long it was. I know that I finished up. It was the end of December because we actually filmed. It was December 2022 because the last two shows that I did with them was with Gamer Aimer and Adam Kralik, but two different shows that we pre-recorded.
Mm-hmm.
But I know it was through the summer. I want to say it was, gosh, I want to say it was sometime in like January, February of that year of 2022, sometime in there. But it may have been a little later, like March. I can't recall right offhand.
I know it was quite a while back because
Yeah.
that was the first time I did a spot
Well, I
on
think you were our first guest.
podcast.
I think you were the first guest that I saw that I was on with, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe. I don't know for sure. When he was starting the podcast, I was invited to be a member and I turned it down. I had my own reasons, some personal stuff, but also at the same time, there was something off for the vibe for me where, I didn't think it would be a good fit. So you want to talk a little bit about what you did with Game Junction?
Well, a good deal of the time. Now we had at that time when I was on, there were one, two, there were was it five of us, I believe. So there was Mark, um, there was Tony, Shane, and myself, and Brandon. I believe it was just the five of us. I don't think there were six. Like I said, it's been over a year. I haven't even watched. Like I said, I haven't watched an episode in a while. I believe it was just the five of us. Yes, it was because the six would be the guest we would have.
Right.
Now of course some weeks one of us may not be there because somebody had like they had their own business and they would
Yeah,
do
it's hard to
stuff
get
on weekends.
together at the same time every week.
Right. And sometimes you might see four of us plus a guest or three of us plus a guest. I remember there was one episode that it was just Tony and myself, and he's like, "What are we gonna do?" And I'm like, "Trust me." And I dressed up like Hulk Hogan for half the episode. I acted like Hulk Hogan. I wore my, I had the boa, the feather boa, and the thing over the head, the do rag, and I didn't have a fake mustache at the time. I was like, darn, I'm like whatever. I'm like, we'll just go on there and then we'll talk about this, that, and the other, and throw some video game stuff in there. At least the show would still go on.
Right.
But every it seemed like every couple weeks I was doing hosting duties. It wasn't sometimes I did some of the help with the planning, some of the subject matter. I remember a lot of us would we'd be messaging all day, during the week. Hey, did you see this was going on? We'd write that down. So then we would end up putting stuff. We'd end up putting stuff together, usually through Messenger, and we would write a few ideas down. And then when Sunday came along, we would be on a little bit beforehand. We'd say, let's. When I was hosting, I always had a whole bunch of subjects set aside. Stuff that was going on during the week. So I tried to be as organized as possible. And then also on the flip side of the coin, Brandon Hurls, and for lack of a better way to put this Game Junction was started by him. And it was always this thing that he would say, well, I want this to be a platform and a community, and it belongs to all of us, and whoever of us join us, it all belongs to us. Well, that was not necessarily true, because it seemed that he was very, very absentee, always very unprepared. I'm not saying he didn't come prepared all the time, but it happened a good deal of the time. And when I say come prepared, and I'm not, let's put it like this. If you have a Sunday job and you have a show that on Sunday, I could see you, rushing into your home, brushing your teeth, maybe, scarfing down something to eat and drink, and just jumping in front of the camera and be like, okay, I'm here.
Right.
But if that's going to be the case every single Sunday, and I'm not saying that's what happened, but if that's going to be the case every single Sunday, then maybe you need to pick a different day for your podcast.
Right.
Or consider pre-recording if you can't go live, because you can't depend upon, and I'm not just saying him, this is anybody. Right. You can't depend upon everybody else to do all of your stuff for you. When I'm hosting a show, if somebody throws an idea at me or something, that's okay. I'm very receptive. I'll even ask any ideas about this or that, the other. But if I'm going to host a show, I put it together. I Photoshop the pictures. I put the subjects together. If I'm doing a video beforehand and after as an intro and outro, the specific to that thing, I put it together. If there's a thumbnail, I put it together. I don't pawn it off on anybody else.
Right.
Okay. And that's something that, because there was this other guy that was a friend of his that was a member of Game Junction, but you never saw him on camera. His name was Lucas, whoever this guy was. I talked with him like via chat before, but it was apparently this guy was a shadowy figure in the background making decisions along with Brandon. And I'm going, okay, so eventually as things went on, well, we're going to start assigning things to people. We need you to do editing, and I need you to do this. And it's like, but what are you going to do? And this was at the time when he would be like, well, I'm really not very good at editing. I don't really have the software. And sadly, he did have this laptop that he bought brand new, allegedly. And the laptop was always having problems. It was always messing up. It was always screwing up. USB ports not working, this, that, and the other. And it can happen. This is the very same man who used to make fun of me because I run all Macs. But, it's like, but he's like, oh, Windows this, Windows that. It's like, dude, my shit works. Excuse my French. My stuff works. Okay, you're the one that keeps having problems with your equipment.
If it works for you, I'm not an Apple person.
Sure, and there's friends of mine.
For you, great.
Yeah, and I've been burned by PCs one too many. I have a PC sitting behind me on the floor. It's a laptop. It's an old laptop that I use on rare occasion for whatever I need a Windows PC for. I can actually run Windows better on my Mac than Windows will run on a Windows PC. But do I have it on my Mac? No. You know why? I don't have to wash my hands every time I go to the bathroom after I'm using my computer. Anyway, so we're not gonna have the PC Mac war here on the air. But still, there were always problems, and we were always very sympathetic because if you're friends with somebody, or you thought you were friends with somebody, you're like, oh man, that really stinks, and then this is not working, this is not working. Okay, fine. There was always a problem. There was always something going on. It was always, hey, can you host this week? Can you do that? Tony would host most times, or I would. Brandon would host, I would say, about a third of the time. But the funny thing is, there are two friends of mine that they were asked to join Game Junction, and they politely declined, and they very much felt that they dodged a bullet. And I won't mention them by name. You two know who you are. And they both told me at one point, because they'd watched the podcast one time, one of them was on the podcast with us as a guest. And they actually told me one time, they go, we thought you were the Game Junction. We thought you were the guy in charge. And I said, what would make you think that? They said, well, because you had your stuff together. You seemed poised. Listen, I suffer and have suffered from social anxiety and depression before.
Absolutely. Same here. Many years.
And I'm a performer. Okay. Same. And not just on camera here, but I've been on stage. I've been on the field in high school, jazz band, you name it, choir. I've done it. I know how to perform. I'm also, believe it or not, a shy person. You may not think that Harrison Ford is a shy person, but he is.
Yeah.
I'm a very shy person too, but I know how to paint on the face and and
I,
stop
I
being the sad
I
clown.
think I think there's a huge part of that is a certain mentality, because I recognize this in myself. Although I do have very heavy social anxiety, when I go out and, like, say we hang out with friends, my wife and I went to a game night at a friend's house with a bunch of other couples last week.
Yeah,
You put on the face, you be charming, you control how people see you at that moment, and that relieves your anxiety.
absolutely. And uh, depending upon the situation, it does go away. It alleviates itself, especially if you're not, I wouldn't say in an uncomfortable situation, but sometimes the anxiety is the dread of going to said thing as opposed to actually being there. It's kind of like once you get the skis and you're going downhill, you're good.
Right. Right.
Anybody watching, you may use that analogy. Uh, but it became one of these things that it was like, hey, well, what ideas do you have for videos? You want to do some videos for Game Junction? Sure. And sometimes I wasn't sure what he was asking for, what Brandon was asking for, and I was coming up with some ideas, and we would do collaborative videos with like what we're doing now, one on
Right.
one side, one on the other. He did have some ideas occasionally, but most of the time it was me coming up with stuff, and a couple times we had to re-record just because cameras didn't work right, or we were using OBS and stuff. The odd stuff with using technology that's not exactly that fantastic to
Yeah.
begin with. It's not like it's StreamYard like this is. StreamYard
Oh,
is easy.
I love StreamYard. I used to use OBS. I tried Zencaster, and let me tell you, StreamYard is by far the best and the easiest.
And OBS on the Mac is really hard because it's made for the PC. And if you want to get your mics to work and stuff, you have to download an additional
All these
patch.
drivers
It's
and shit.
it's
Yeah.
a pain, and I would get made fun of for that too. It's like there's gentle ribbing and there's being made fun of. It's just like, okay, you're crossing over. I'm asking you to stop.
Right. Gentle ribbing, like right
Yeah.
before we started recording, you were like, hey,
Here's
I'm
a
having
bit.
a camera problem. And I'm like, no, man, that's just what you look like. Let's go. I do want to say before as we progress here, that you were one of the first people that I originally interviewed, and I still
Yes.
have that recorded interview. But I decided that maybe we should do this again. That was
Sure.
made for public, because we had agreed that that would remain private, and maybe some things were shared off topic that may not be relevant. And so, I just wanted to do a whole new recording, but I want to acknowledge that you and I had, like, what, about an hour long
I think that
interview?
was right. Yeah, about an hour, maybe a little longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, things started to change, and I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself. Things started to change, and I would see these little mood changes because I've got my own channel,
Right.
and it would seem that because I was trying to get stuff together for my channel. Am I like the editor of the year? No, but I've learned over the past 4 or 5 years how to edit fairly well.
Right.
I think.
Not me, but good for you.
But some stuff that I do takes a little more time because I put up the green screen, I do skits, my channel's just what I do with games and my gaming stuff is not straightforward like you would see on, say, like a John Hancock channel or IGN or maybe Metal Jesus. And Metal Jesus does, he has this bubbly personality, and he does, on rare occasion, work in some, and it's been a long time since he's done that, but work in some skit type stuff. But usually it's just his personality that makes the draw, and he presents everything very factually. I do that to a degree, but I infuse a great deal of comedy or skit routines or whatever. And sometimes it goes throughout. So I have a lot of stuff that I have to get done. And for me to be doing that for 2 channels and editing and writing and all that, and I was just like, no, this is your bag. And Brandon was getting very pushy, angry, demanding, I would even dare say abusive, manipulative about, well, and very woe is me, and I can't get this done, with his own personal life and whatever stuff that was going on in the background with his personal life. It always took precedence over what was going on. So everybody else was supposed to be doing, quote unquote, his work, or get ideas for him and his channel. What I was calling and other people have said this to me, the make me famous thing.
Okay, so let me ask you a question right here, because we're on the subject, and other different people have different stories depending on this particular part, but it mostly seems to depend on a certain aspect. So I'm going to ask you this without leading the question. I'm going to ask it as generally as I can. So what was the general attitude of making content for Game Junction versus making content for your own channel that was not Game Junction?
You should be doing stuff for me, not for yourself. That was the attitude. It wasn't said that way. And also, any attention that I would get if we were out in public, which we were only in public one time together at a particular convention.
Is that the one I met you at?
Yes.
Yes. I actually met Thomas there also and did not remember. I didn't have a great time at that particular place, but that's a different story.
Well, yes, it is. That is a completely different story. Just because I hung out with him a good deal of that day, and I was trying to do the best I could to have a good time, film, that sort of a thing. But the attitude toward, well, we could touch on that later, but the attitude was, the attitude was, well, you're doing stuff for yourself, but you're not doing it for Game Junction. And I need this stuff done, and it's just like, I mean, I put my foot down. I'm like, listen, number one, I have a family life.
Right.
And at that time my daughter was my camera does that. I hate that. I think it's a setting. So, come on, do it. But there was there was the idea of having my own life, my own channel, but that wasn't acceptable. And I was really starting to get very stressed out because I was trying to juggle way too much. And then in the middle of the summer, I lost my job that year. Mm-hmm. And then I had to fight on it. Now, am I a person that wants to sit on, and collect on the dole? No. But I'm a trained graphic designer. I have a fine arts degree in graphic design, and trying to find a job in that sort of thing and or video editing is very important to me. But while I'm doing that, I had unemployment, and they screwed up, and I had to fight unemployment. Do you think that a friend would, be supportive and be like, oh, is there anything you need from me? I'm like, well, there's nothing you can do. But no, it became
offer.
Oh no, he got very insulting. He started, well, you should find a job. It's like, dude, what do you think I'm trying to do?
Right.
He's like, well, you're trying to get unemployment. Da, 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 da. It's like, he started making fun of me for trying to get my unemployment and basically called me lazy, and you should go get a Walmart job and da da da. I'm like, you're the one having, problems finding work.
Right.
I mean, because he went from job to job to job to job. I had a steady job making X amount of money per year, and it dried up just because the company I worked for got bought out.
Yes, sadly, sometimes that happens.
You don't make fun of people when they're down. You don't kick them when they're down.
Right.
So my wife never. I mean, she never really. I mean, we were at the same. She was actually volunteering at the same convention. She never actually even really spoke to him, I don't think. But my wife does not hate anybody. But she has actually said these words: I hate him and what he's doing to you. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately, when I was finally not there, which we will get to probably later, It was almost like a sigh of relief. I don't know if anybody's a Star Wars fan, but at the end of Return of the Jedi, when the Death Star blows up and the fish guy, Admiral Akbar, when he sits back in his seat and he's just like,
Yeah.
the relief. I saw the same kind of relief wash over my wife. She goes, well, thank God that's over. Yeah. Yeah. She was relieved I was done with that.
Right.
As was I. As was I.
Yeah.
But jealousy, absolute jealousy that any kind of attention was being given to me on my channel, or if we were at that convention, absolute angry jealousy. It was just like, I'm not walking around, seeking attention like a puppy looking for a hot dog or something.
No, you were very polite, but actually, I found you to be very low key, because I had done the podcast episode with you, and I did feel like you were running the podcast when I was on there. Obviously, you had questions for me prepared and stuff like that. I found that really pleasant, because I like a little bit of structure when I'm working with somebody else, because I'm so loosey-goosey, off the top all the time. But I felt like when I met you in person that you were very low key. I thought, I don't mean that as an insult.
No, not at all.
Right.
Well, and I think that was one of my first or second show. What was when I met you, so I kind of didn't know what to expect. So I'm kind of gauging responses and stuff. I didn't know, and I will say this: when I was on the podcast, I did get way too potty mouthed. I'm not generally that way, especially on my channel. I don't F-bomb unless it's during a live show, but I don't sit there and F-bomb. I kind of showed off a little bit eventually, because sometimes
swearing in front of your friends.
Yes, very locker roomy,
right,
is how it started to feel. And then I started saying to myself, I need to draw this back. Right. And I did, because Bill, I mean, I'll be honest with you, and frank with everybody else. I am a Christian man, just like Dave Mustaine from Megadeth, who is also a Christian man. He said, just because somebody doesn't need a smack in the jaw doesn't mean I'm not going to give it to him, just because I'm a follower of Jesus. I mean, I'm imperfect. I do swear. Right. I try not to be a trucker. And if I'm around other people that are going to get really offended by it, or little kids, I don't spew at the mouth.
Right.
But on my channel, if I do say a couple of the George Carlin,
the 7,
but maybe not the higher 7, maybe the lower 7 words.
So basically, you were in an environment where you were becoming something you weren't fully comfortable with.
Well,
or do you not like that you were comfortable with it?
A little of both, because like they say, and I don't mean that the other guys were pigs, but like we said, you get into a locker room, it's locker room talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I am responsible for what comes out of my mouth.
Absolutely.
And that's how come I needed to start drawing it back. And I did. And I was like, okay, I am getting too comfortable with being so comfortable.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, I get that. We all have our personal boundaries.
And that's okay. And
it has to be respected.
Right. And
so was there a specific incident that you can remember that led you to say, okay, I'm done. This is where I'm leaving? Oh,
yes, absolutely. It was the 2 weekends in a row. Oh, look at that. I got balloons now by putting up a 5. Great. I got to shut that off on my iPhone. Folks, I use my iPhone because it has a great camera on it. I don't use my webcam. It's not a good camera. So you get to see balloons once in a while and thumbs up.
I'm okay with it. Go with it.
As long as I don't see like some demon behind me or something, we'll be good. But we decided that we were going to pre-record 2 shows, because the podcast was going to be on during Christmas and New Year's. Mm-hmm. So we had, the one guest was Adam Kralik, and I believe we recorded that one first, but that was going to be for New Year's. Or Kroll. Adam, if you're watching this, sorry if I mispronounced your name. And
it's okay. Nobody knows who I am.
Yeah. And he was a very nice guest as well. Everybody was very nice that was ever on there. And then, of course, Gamer Aimer was on, and she was going to be. We recorded her second, and and what a nice person. I
Absolutely.
love her to death,
So delightful.
and just polite and bubbly and fun. She actually kind of reminds me of a girl I went to high school with that I'm still friends to this day. Not just high school. I actually knew her from first grade. This girl, but anyway, she reminds me a lot of her. But that was going to be the Christmas show. So I'm trying to remember this. I might be getting it out of order because I believe we might have filmed Brandy's first, and that was the New Year's show, and then Adams was whichever one it was. Yeah, it was. We did Brandy's first, I believe, because the following week when we did the Adams show, which was going to be the Christmas show, I think. Go back and look. I don't know. He took me aside, and he messaged me. He goes, I don't remember if it was a phone call or he messaged me because we finished recording the show, and then he messaged me. And he goes, you got a second to talk? And I go, yeah. He goes, and I go, yeah, what's up? And so I'm trying to remember. I think it was a phone call because, I went to the bathroom. He usually would go to the bathroom immediately after, and then like we still had the guest on, and then the other two guys were still there. We were going to talk for a little bit and then get off. So next thing you know, he says to me, well, let me back up because I was getting ready to start asking a few people because he had a few connections because of the convention that he was involved with, and he's like, yeah, there's some people on a list, and there's some of the guests. And I was getting ready to do a collaborative video, and I was like, well, I wouldn't mind asking maybe a couple people here and there to be in this video. And there was one person in particular that I said, well, I'd like to ask this person. And he goes, I wouldn't ask that person because they're kind of big. He goes, not saying that you couldn't get them, but maybe some of the guests that we've had on, maybe stick with them. Now, I did ask a couple of bigger people, one whom I know, I won't mention. I mean, I know him personally and we're friends now, and we've been friends for a couple of years now, but he has a fairly large channel of about 230,000 people.
Mm.
And then there, of course, was Mr. John Riggs. I asked him, and then of course a couple people there in my retro roundtable brethren. They were also in this video, but I had asked. He suggested that I contact Brandy. He goes, well, we just had her on last week. Why don't you contact her? I go, okay. He goes, well, look in the folder that we have on the Google Drive, and you'll be able to get her information. So I popped off a letter to her, and I was just like, hey, I want to do this video, and like the same kind of collaborative video you see all these people do. I ask a question, and then you give 2 or 3 minutes to answer it, and that's it. And so next thing you know, it's the following week, and Brandy was like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. I would be delighted to do that. And I'm like, great, that'd be fantastic. So I had her and several other people lined up. Ultimately, Brandy did not end up in the video. Here's why. So when I'm on the phone call with Brandon, he's just like, yeah, I don't think the dynamic's really working out with you on the show and everything. And I'm going, where's this coming from? It's like out of left field. And he's just, and I'm like, he's like, maybe we should just maybe not have you on the show anymore. I'm like, what? Because he was thinking about, he had talked with me and Lucas and Mark on camera about booting Tony and Shane out because they're just using the channel for because they have a what do you call they have their own like it's they do like these small expos where they live, and I think they do one like about every other month or maybe quarterly. I don't recall. And they're smaller shows, but they do really well, and they do really well at it, and they're very organized, these guys, so they know what they're doing. So he was talking about getting rid of them, and I'm like, why? He goes, I think they're just using the Game Junction for their own gain, and that's why they're on here. And it's just like, well anybody,
shouldn't everyone be benefiting from everyone working together?
Thank you. Because if you're going to be on a show together, just like, when we do our retro roundtable thing, at the end of the show, I was kind of taught by another host that I know, just by watching him, you kind of go around and you say, hey, where are we going to find you at? Where can we find you on the web?
Absolutely.
Plug whatever you want to plug.
Oh, dude, every time we have a guest on any of my shows, because I do the Billtendo show, I do Gameonia every week. Of course, we plug everything. We have a guest, man, plug the hell out of it.
Yeah, and you have somebody on, just like when anybody does these collaborative videos. All right, other people may have a different attitude toward it, but my attitude is this: I've got a small channel,
right?
And if John Riggs, who has around 170,000 people, comes on, and if I've got one person who's never heard of John Riggs, one subscriber, one watcher, or how about not even a subscriber, just somebody that randomly comes on and sees this video and goes, well, I dig that John Riggs guy. Well, I like that Retro Rob guy. I really dig that Caps Off Gaming guy.
Right.
And if they all get one subscriber, great. It's one more than you didn't have. But what if that cross-pollination works the other way? What if 10 subscribers of John Riggs goes, I really dig that, that Gamer Aimer. I'm going to check her out.
Right.
Well, then great, it worked for them. That's why we do this. But the other reason why we do it is so, number one, there's a sense of community. We get to have a little fun. We're never on the same camera together, but we almost always do the premiere together, and we're all in the chat, hey, ha, da, 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 that sort of thing. It's supposed to be fun. So when he's just like, yeah, I don't think it's a good idea anymore, and all that stuff, and I'm going, where's this coming, out of left field, So then he's texting me a little bit later because he's backpedaling. And I'm like, oh, and he's like, and then he calls me again, and he's like, yeah, he goes, I don't know where you got this idea that I wanted to let you go. I'm like, he goes, I'm not firing you. I'm like, you told me the dynamic wasn't working out. You didn't want to have me in the show anymore. He goes, I didn't say that. I'm like, yeah, you did. I'm like, I can show you the texts that we were having in between the second conversation. I go, no, we're good, dude. Because I was just like, since everything was becoming so stressful anyway, this was a good reason to get out.
Right.
Because there was never any organization. It was always high stress. It was always demand. I want this from you. I want this from you. It's just like, are you going to give anything back?
Right. Anything?
I mean, you're going to make fun of my computers. You're going to make fun of me not having a job. You're going to make, this ain't right, man. And I mean, like I said, any buddies gentle ribbing each other, that's one thing. This was not a buddy, I mean, yeah, is it petty, talking about the computers thing? Maybe, but he was really hitting on that hard. But still, making fun of a family man who's having a hard time, that ain't right.
No.
I mean, and basically calling me lazy and stuff like that, that ain't right. So essentially, the immediate show, the very first show of 2023, guess who is a member of Game Junction? Gamer Aimer.
Right. And
Gamer Aimer at that time had about 8,500 subscribers, and he liked me because of my dynamic, and I didn't have a lot of subscribers, but I really like what you offer. I really like your personality. I like your editing style. We like to bring in, would you like to be on a podcast? Well, hell, almost anybody who hears the words, would you like to be on a podcast, whether it be a small podcast or a big one, sure, maybe we can make it big.
Right.
Maybe not. Maybe it stays small. Who knows? But we're having fun.
Right. And
I met some interesting people on the way. Bill, I would have never met you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I don't know if I would call myself interesting, but hey, I appreciate that.
I do, and from what I know, you are definitely a Southern gentleman. So, I love that. So, but yeah, and I, like you said at the beginning, I don't want to necessarily see everything burned down that this guy has tried to accomplish. But when you're trying to accomplish it on top of other people's numbers and other people's backs, and you're not doing anything yourself,
right?
then that is not accomplishing things on your own. And there's something I do want to put out there before you ask me anything else. And everybody who is going to see this, please listen carefully, okay? Number one, my grandmother used to say this. Now, my grandmother, she would have been 124 years old this year. So that's a long time that she would have been alive, but she died a long time ago. She was about 86 when she passed away, and she was wise as wise could be. And she one time said, the more you stir an old turd, the more it's going to stink. Now, I'm not calling anybody a turd. That is just an analogy. But we can interview about this. We get all this stuff about this out there. We get it done, and we need to all stop talking about it. And here's why. One, there has to be a stopping point.
Absolutely.
Number two, it ain't going to go away if you keep stirring it. And number three, I want to see this guy. Listen, there can be redemption, but it ain't going to be in this community. And it's not going to be for a long time. Would I like to see him be a customer at a convention, that sort of a thing? Yes. If he wants to still keep making videos, great. Do it on your own. Okay? Do it on your own. If you want to try to do it off the backs of other people, go ahead. But here's the thing. There is forgiveness. You're going to get forgiveness from me right now because I know this person's going to watch this video. You're getting forgiveness from me right now. All the stuff, all the things you said, I may talk about them tonight, but I forgive you. Okay? You are forgiven, but I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. Okay? If I see you at a convention, I'll say, hi, how are you doing? It's nice to see you. Have a nice day. Please don't follow me around. Okay? But there has to be a point where we all stop. And what I would like to see, number one, I know he's in bad health. I know financially he's not that great. And on top of that, there's other stuff that I won't even bring up. Okay? But the thing is, being vengeful, being nasty, being evil, that ain't going to help you, number one. And of course, we all know that his mother got involved on social media as well. That needs to stop too.
Yes.
Number one, there are no battles to fight because either she's been gaslit or she's sitting here going, well, my precious son can't possibly be like this. Listen, even serial killers' mothers will support them.
Right.
Okay?
I mean, Mickey Tendo loves me to death, and she's always in my chats on live streams, but she ain't jumping in on any drama.
Right.
You know?
And just like Brian from the other channel, I can't remember his channel, and I loved that interview the show the other night. Just like Brian said, well, I went channel 13, but let's put it like this. I forgot what Brian said, and if it comes to me, I'm getting old, Bill. If it comes to me, I'll say it, but I would like to see him be successful doing something that helps him and his family out. But it's not going to be this. Because if you have to keep being nasty and mean and evil to people and having packages sent to your house that don't belong to you and you sell them, that's stuff that Gamer Aimer told me herself. Gamer Aimer also told me about how he would bad talk about me, slander me, say stuff about me that wasn't true. It was actually stuff that was actually about him.
Right.
And that's how come Gamer Aimer wasn't in my video. You shouldn't be in Dr. Scott's video. Oh no, he's a thief and he steals and he does this and he does that and he'll bug you and he won't leave you alone.
I think a lot of
what?
Fences have been mended as people leave Game Junction because I had bad opinions about people that I no longer have anymore. Brandy and I have become great friends. I love Brandy to death. But I do want to say, to the point you just made, I'm going to tell you the exact same thing that I told Thomas and that I told Brandon himself. Because after my original video released, oh boy, did I receive a lot of text messages.
I bet.
And I offered him. I said, let's get on a video call and record it. That way, nobody's talking out their ass, and we can debate. Be completely out in the open with it. And he declined to do that. But my advice to him, because his first response which I guess is a fairly natural response, was vengeance. I'm releasing dirt on
Well, yeah.
everybody, blah, blah, blah. And
what dirt would you have on me? What locker room talk?
There's no dirt on me either. But the thing is, like, that my advice was very simply, hey, man, that's not the move. Because do you know what people love more than a good drama? They love a good redemption arc. Accept responsibility for what you did, apologize, and do better as a person.
You know, not only do I agree with that 1,000%, I hate saying 1,000% because you can't have more than 100%. Ha ha. No, but anyway, no, but not only do I agree with you 100%, I'm going to remind, out of pop culture, some younger people may not know who George Michael was, and he was a wonderful, wonderful singer. And this gentleman, he was gay, and way back in the early to mid 90s, he was caught in a public bathroom doing something lewd by a police officer. And I won't even get into the whole story, but he was arrested, and then he had to do some community service. Well, the best way to get over something is to, number one, admit that you did something wrong. And number two, he had a party later on. And I remember George Michael telling this story. And he said, on the invitations, it said, at the very bottom, the bathroom facilities will be off limits because the host may want to indulge himself. That's hilarious because he's poking fun at himself. Now, there's nothing I can think of that this could be, where Brandon could make fun of himself here. But I'm just saying the redemption arc is much better.
Yeah.
Okay? Because it's like this. If one of these days he stops doing what he's doing, and I don't mean stop being on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, but if he starts making an honest living out of it, and doing it the best way he knows how, and he may not be the most charismatic person in the world. He may not have the best ideas in the world, but I'm sure that there are people out there that do find him interesting enough to watch, because there's always somebody for everybody.
Absolutely.
And, I love Classic Game Room. I love Metal Jesus Rocks. I like a lot of channels out there. Okay. But that may not be everybody's cup of tea. Okay. And just because I have a channel doesn't mean that somebody's going to want to watch some joker making jokes all the time either. Maybe they want their IGN. Maybe they want their straight black cup of coffee. They don't want it with a splash of Irish whiskey. Okay? And if they just want their IGN or their GameSpot or whatever, fine. They don't want jokes with their games. No offense. That's fine. I may not be everybody's cup of tea either. You may not like my voice. You may not like my ugly face. That's fine. But I'm sure that there's somebody out there, or a few somebodies, who actually find Brandon interesting. Okay? And if that's the case, more power to him. But I think he needs to do something that is going to be, because what I do, I'm doing this as a hobby, but I'm doing it full time right now because I'm not working. Okay?
Right.
And I may as well be putting some time into it. So, and I'm having fun, and I'm having fun with my other buddies too. And I love going to places and meeting people, which just like, and I hate to keep bringing her up because maybe she is a nice lady. I don't know, because any mama bear is going to want to come to somebody's defense. I get that.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, if you're unaware that your kid's doing something, because I'll paraphrase something she did say. She was just like, well, he's only ever said nice things about all of you. Do you actually think that he's going to come and say, well, I double-crossed this person, I double-crossed that person, I stole from this person, I was acting as this person's manager? No, nobody's ever going to come. Nobody in their right mind is going to go tell their mother that, because it's just, so. Like I said, either she's being gaslit or whatever. But, ma'am, seriously, if you're watching this thing,
I would never tell my mom all the dirt I do.
No,
unless I'm there and I'm doing it just to freak her out.
but it's like sometimes a kid does get found out, tell me the truth. Right. And then because I've told people sometimes if when I found them lying, I would rather somebody tell me the bare ass truth and I know what's going on, as opposed to my imagination going wild behind my head.
Right.
Okay. So it's just like, okay, I did some unsavory things. This is not cool. And I think I need to apologize to a bunch of people. And you know what? I remember when John Hancock and I think it was Smash JT kind of got into it one time, and John took his hat off. He put it in his hands, and John, like a man, looked at the camera and said, listen, I apologize. John's a nice gentleman. He is. He's a good guy. And we all can do wrong. We can all put our foot in our mouth. But when you keep doing stuff like that, that ain't right. So, like I said, Mom, yes, I did a bunch of unsavory things, and I don't know how to get out of it.
Right.
So,
like I said, it goes back to the first step is acknowledging. The second step is apologizing. And then everybody loves a good redemption arc. Would I like to see a redemption story out of this? Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't want to destroy this guy, but I want people to know what they're getting involved with.
I would totally invite him on my show, on my live show, one day if things turn around. Otherwise, I don't want to have any association. I will not be ordered around. I will not be told by somebody half my age to do this and do that for them when you're not giving me a check.
Right.
Okay. I didn't sign on for a job, I do freelance graphic design here, now, and, when I sign on for a job, I do it, but I wasn't there to do everybody's ideas, work, editing, special effects, thumbnails, everything. It's like, no, I got my own channel. I got my own family. I got my own life. That's not for me.
Right.
And, and I know for a fact that there were other people that were going through that too.
Right. Is there anything else you want to add before we dip out?
I think I've said just about everything that needs to be said. And if I want to reiterate one thing that, if anybody's been burned, anybody watching this right now, you've been burned by this man, forgive him and move on, and let's stop talking about it. I think that we need to leave him alone and let him sort his cards out. Let him figure out what his next move needs to be, and hopefully that next move isn't going to be, well, how bad can I try to burn you down now? Because here's the thing: do you really want a community, a huge community of people to just swarm on you again? No, nobody wants to do that. We don't want to do that. Nobody else wants to do that. None of this was about trying to make. It was just about. It was just like putting a buoy out there to say, hey, listen, there's some rough waters ahead. You better make sure you know what you're getting into before you go swimming in them.
Right.
And, I had a bad exchange myself, but Brandy and Thomas got the real short end of the stick.
I agree.
So thank God I didn't get in it as badly as I did. And there's other people that I know who have said, what do you think? Should I? I'm like, you do what you want to do, but I'm going to tell you my experience, and I'm never going to tell you no, don't go do it. You got to make your own damn decisions.
Right.
And every last person has said, yeah, I'm glad I never did that. I'm glad I never did that. And even people I've never even talked to, I'm seeing, yeah, I'm glad I never did that. I'm glad I never did that. Excuse me. Like you said, Bill, I don't want to see it burnt down, but if there were people who were following Brandy and then went over there and then they're not getting anything out of it over there, then maybe they need to leave too. But if they're getting something out of it, if they like the content the guy's got, by all means stay.
Right.
By all means stay. Watch him, help him out, support him if that's what you like. And if you're hearing all this and if you think that all these people that have lined up and that we're all full of crap, and you want to stick around, that's your decision too. And there's nothing wrong with that, except for anybody who comes to his defense saying, this is not what this person does. Because no, there's plenty of receipts out there, and there's plenty of people who can produce those receipts. I've seen those receipts.
Right.
And it ain't pretty. So that's the only thing that I have to say. Go in peace, everybody, and hopefully he will also go in peace, because that's what this should be. This should be a time of healing and a time for this community to get on with what we do best: playing games, having fun with each other, and meeting each other at conventions and stuff like that, and enjoying each other. And yes, Brandon, you can be a part of that too one day, but it ain't going to be today, brother. It ain't going to be today.
Well said, Scott. Let's get out of here.
Yes. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.